Thank you for joining our webinar today. And so for us to announce the first Global Kinship Care Week next week and raise awareness on kinship care. In today's webinar, we'll be exploring what kinship care is and the forms it can take in different parts of the world. And we'll be sharing about the upcoming Global Kinship Care Week, our key messages and how to get involved. I'm Gemma Gillam, and this is a Family for Every Child event. Family for Every Child is a member-led global alliance of local CSOs focused on preventing family separation, strengthening families, and ensuring high-quality alternative care. All of our work on kinship care has been practitioner-led and informed. Next slide, please. Joining us today in today's webinar are Raju Ghimire, the Deputy Director of Voice of Children based in Nepal. Raju has over 25 years' experience in the child rights and child protection sector and has collaborated with organisations around the globe, including in Kenya, India, the UK and Cambodia, to conduct research and deliver training on topics including the reintegration of family-separated children and child and family counselling. Blessing Mutama is the Director of Farm Orphan Support Trust in Zimbabwe, FOST, which provides support for orphans and vulnerable children in Zimbabwe. FOST believes that orphan children have the best opportunity for the development within a family group without sibling separation in an environment that is familiar to them. As a researcher, Blessing has contributed to a number of projects in the field of kinship care, including the recent scoping study on kinship care in Zimbabwe, the paradox of kinship care in Sub-Saharan Africa, and the global guidance on kinship care. Gemma Carroll is the head of campaigns and communications for Kinship, the leading kinship care charity in England and Wales. She has over 17 years' experience in the charity sector, specialising in campaigns, government relations and communications. She's previously worked for NSPCC, Anti-Slavery International and Voice 21, where she led political campaigns to lobby government, raise issues up to the political and media agenda, and mobilise audiences to take action in order to secure impactful change to legislation, policy and practice in the UK. Thank you to the three of you for joining us today. A brief introduction to the family's work on kinship care. Family for Every Child started focusing on kinship care about 8 years ago when it became clear that the global DI movement was getting good momentum, but very few people were talking about the role of kinship care was going to need to play for those children no longer in institutions. It became clear that there was a lack of data and evidence on kinship care, and this prompted Family for Every Child to conduct a range of research, looking to understand how kinship care was being used, what were the benefits, and what were some of the challenges being faced. The research shows that kinship care was the most heavily used form of care outside of parental care, and yet was often the least supported. It was usually the preferred form of care for children and caregivers, and often considered culturally normative. Next slide, please. This lack of support for kinship care led family to develop the global guidance on kinship care, which was launched earlier this year. This was done through a 2-year practitioner-led interagency process and literature review. The guidance was reviewed and endorsed by over 33 agencies, and this guidance is soon to be translated into both Portuguese and Spanish. The guidance covers a wide range of areas, including what is kinship care, principles of good practice in supporting kinship care, how to create an enabling environment for kinship care, different pathways to services and support, and issues around the formalisation of kinship care, services and support for kinship care, and variations in that support need. It also has a range of recommendations and conclusions, and it includes 44 examples of promising practice from around the world. Some of those key recommendations that came out of the guidance included kinship care being crucial to the well-being, development and survival of children around the world, recognising that kinship care is a complex form of care requiring a sophisticated response. Kinship care is fundamentally different to both parental and foster care, and children and young people and parents have much to contribute to meeting their needs. Kinship care has wide community support in many cultures, and some kinship care arrangements need to be monitored, but not all of them do. Kinship care does not always need to be regulated, and formalisation should not be a prerequisite for support. And finally, kinship care families have multifaceted support needs. These recommendations on the needs around kinship care and the need for increased recognition and support for Kinship Care has led family to announce the launch of the first ever Global Kinship Care Week. Family for Every Child is launching the first Global Kinship Care Week next week between the 7th and the 13th of October. The purpose of this week is just to shine a spotlight on kinship care, raise awareness about what kinship care is, celebrate the benefits of kinship care, and showcase some of the solutions highlighted in the guidance and the research that's been conducted over the recent years. Next slide, please. Our key messages for the global campaign include kinship care keeps families together, it strengthens communities and societies, it's widespread and yet often poorly supported. Kinship care can be a fantastic form of care for children, and it can often lead to better outcomes than other forms of alternative care. Kinship care is often children's preferred form of care, and it has often been seen to be cheaper than other forms of alternative care. Finally, kinship care is a complex form of care requiring a sophisticated response. Global Kinship Care Week will be occurring in over 15 different countries globally next week. And now we're going to hear from Gemma from Kinship in the UK.
Hello, can you all hear me okay?
Why they are introducing Kinship Care Week in their countries and what their key messages and plans are for next week. Gemma, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here today. It's really wonderful to be amongst so many global organisations all working towards similar goals, and I'm fascinated to hear and understand more about all of your work as well. So at Kinship here in the UK, we work with about 15,000 kinship carers a year across mainly England and Wales. We offer a lot of support services, one-to-one support for families in crisis, as well as a big network of local community peer support groups for kinship carers to get support from others. And we have an advice line and also free training and workshops that we provide for kinship families. We work with all kinship carers, formal and informal, so it's regardless of whether they have a legal order or not. It's anybody, any family member or family friend who's raising a child where their parents can't. Um, and we have about 20% of our staff are kinship carers themselves. So kinship carers are just involved in every part of our work, from our policy, campaigning, research, to all the services that we provide. And before COVID, we were about 25 people. Now we're over 100. And I think that really reflects the growth of kinship care and the profile of kinship care in the UK as a policy solution. So just tiny bit of context, there's about 141,000 children in kinship care across England and Wales, well over double the number of children in foster care or other forms of local authority care. But the system here is hugely fragmented, unfair, unequal in terms of the support that kinship carers can access. Our starting point is always the needs of the child. So many children in kinship care have experienced abuse, neglect, terrible trauma and loss, very similar experiences to children in the care system, yet they are treated differently. They don't have access to the same support. They need therapeutic support and support in education, and also the people caring for them need support to be able to manage those behaviours and the things that they're struggling with. And a lot of our families also face, a lot of significant financial hardship because they may be an older age, living off a pension, they hadn't planned to be raising children, and they often have to leave their jobs in order to raise those children. So our message is one of equality. We want kinship carers to be treated the same as other carers in terms of the support that they get, but that support needs to be absolutely tailored and unique to those families and to kinship carers, whether it's formal or informal care. So there's a real lottery of support in terms of legal order, geography, and it's causing obviously a lot of strain on kinship families. There's lots of organisations in the UK that we've been campaigning for change for years for better support for kinship families. But it's been the last couple of years that it's really risen up the political agenda. The government and policymakers are really starting to understand that supporting kinship families provides better outcomes for those children and for the state because it's so costly for so many children to be in what is a very overstretched care system. So Kinship Care Week, kinship carers obviously tell us that they feel invisible, isolated, forgotten, and unacknowledged within society. So awareness raising of kinship care for us is so important here in the UK, not just to reach our policy goals, but to ensure that local communities and wider society are supporting kinship carers, and to help kinship carers themselves find a community, to understand that there are others out there like them and that there is support out there for them as well. So it's now a national week of celebration that we hold every October to highlight the amazing work that kinship carers do. It was first held in 2016 by our wonderful partners, Kinship Carers Liverpool, which is a city in the UK, and who I think are here today. They found that no one was celebrating kinship carers, and they wanted to raise local and national awareness of kinship care and make sure that kinship carers were recognised in society. So it started small with lots of local activities that they were doing, getting local politicians involved, but they took that to a national forum as well, to Parliament, and they took that to national alliances of kinship care organisations. So by 2018, we had the first Kinship Care Week being held across the country, which was brilliant. And from since then, it's gone from strength to strength, with our organisation, Kinship, kind of leading on the coordination among our partners with Kinship Carers Liverpool and other organisations in the Kinship Care Alliance. And we come together very early on in the year to start planning, and produce kind of digital resources, so that all our messaging and our communications content is aligned, and everything that we're sharing, with our partners, with our contacts, with our communities is also aligned to kind of one strong message about celebrating kinship carers. So this year we have a This is Kinship Care Week theme. For us, actually, it's about helping build understanding of the term kinship care, because a lot of people outside of professional kind of spaces don't understand that term, and we find a lot of kinship carers themselves don't identify as a kinship carer too. So for us, it's about the term, increasing awareness of that term, but also helping people understand who kinship carers are, the amazing diversity that there is among the families that we work with, and what their reality is, what their experience is, the good things, the wonderful things that make kinship care so brilliant, why it's so positive for kinship families and for children to stay within their family networks, but also what's challenging. We want to bring some of that difficulty to light as well, that it's actually not just as easy as a child going to live with their grandmother and that's that there's a lot of challenges, and that those families really need support. So yeah, for us, it's about them being valued, about having the good and the bad being recognised, and also ensuring that families are celebrated. Um, so if you want to just flick to the next slide, I've just put together some photos which I thought might be nicer for people to see, just so you can see the breadth and extent of what we do. This was Kinship Care Week last year, and one of the key things that we do is community events, because our communities are so strong, coming together and celebrating each other and spreading that awareness locally. So we work through all our kind of support groups in communities, to run kind of tea parties or events with speakers. So from big events to small events, to bring together local organisations, local businesses, local politicians, to really celebrate kinship carers, because it's a huge opportunity to ensure that everybody says something about kinship care that week. We say if you haven't acknowledged kinship carers in your local community, this is the time to do it in Kinship Care Week. If you want to flick to the next slide. We also do a lot of national influencing. So obviously it's a time when kinship care is higher up in the agenda, and it's a really big opportunity for us to kind of highlight some of the challenges that kinship carers are facing. So we often release a policy report and some new research, where we can gain some kind of media coverage across national media, and we're finding increasingly with the government profile that we have, that ministers are wanting to meet with us, and meet with kinship carers during Kinship Care Week. So next week we're going to be meeting with the Children and Families Minister, who's visiting one of our local community support groups, with some media in tow as well. And then we also hold an event in Parliament in London, where we bring together kinship carers and members of Parliament, for them to have some time face to face to talk about some of the challenges that they're facing. And finally, just the last slide, just shows kind of what we do online, through email and through social media is a huge part of our work to make sure that our Kinship Care Week message travels. So we work with celebrities, in the UK who have been raised in kinship care themselves, raised by their grandparents, and they're starting to talk about their experiences and share their experiences, which is really helping us kind of raise the profile. Some of our funders, some high profile businesses that we work with that support kinship carers in their workplace, even the Royal Foundation led by the Princess of Wales, often support Kinship Care Week as well. So it's lots of kind of high profile stakeholders coming together and also posting and sharing some of our content. So yeah, from next Monday we're going to be launching it. We have a new kind of animation with voices of kinship carers that we're going to be launching on our website. Do go to kinship.org.uk to check it out. I'm really excited to see what's happening globally as well. So I'll be watching closely. And thank you.
Thanks, Gemma, and thanks for giving us a bit of the origin story of where this has all come from. And I think I echo you. I think it's fantastic and quite exciting to see how it's clearly grown and grown, and that there's real support for those original messages of really celebrating and valuing the impact that kinship carers have, not just on the children that they're caring for, but also the broader communities and contexts that they're supporting in. Thanks, Gemma. Right, Raju, it'd be great to hear from you in terms of what the plans are in Nepal and why you're also launching a Kinship Care Week there.
Okay, thank you very much, Gemma, and this is very good opportunity to share about the Kinship Care campaign plan in Nepal. Yeah, Voice of Children is working for the protection of family separated children, and since 25 years we are working for the reintegration of children in different form, in biological family, kinship family, foster family, and in Nepal kinship uh, care setting somehow is isolated, and here is need to more awareness and promotion about the kinship care. That's why we are launching kinship care campaign in Nepal together with family for every child, other partner around the globe. So in Nepal, by launching kinship care campaign, Voice of Children is raising awareness on kinship care among children, families, communities. We in Nepal all know children are living in, I mean, kinship care setting, but there is not awareness. There is not any measure of the protection or safeguarding of the children. So there is need this uh, sensitization to raise the awareness on kinship care. And children, family, they are living in their extended family member, but they are not aware about their issue, their right, and just, I mean, they are both children and family. They are thinking they are just doing this thing for a cause. And the another issue is we want to strengthen the network and coordination for lobby and advocacy regarding the kinship care. Within the organization also there is not a clear concept or same or common understanding about the kinship care. So we want to disseminate the information, disseminate the information about the kinship care system for the reintegration of children who are separated from the family, who doesn't have biological family, or biological family are not able to take care of the children. And another our, I mean, objective is to advocate for the kinship care provision to policy maker. I mean, in Nepal almost people they are, I mean, ignoring this type of system. So Voice of Children is advocating. We are informing to the policy maker about the kinship care provision uh, in Nepal. Another slide, please. So in Kinship Care Week campaign, Voice of Children is carried out different type of activity in Nepal. So we disseminate the information in social media. So the social media user, they can learn from the different information about the kinship care. So another one is orientation sessions for the social worker on kinship care. So social worker who are working directly with the children. So we are organizing sessions with them to make clear, to sensitize about the kinship care provision. So another one, we are going to organize orientation session with the children who are living in the shelters, temporary shelters, and the children in the shelter, they are living, but they do not have their biological family, and somehow this activity will make understand them about the kinship care and importance of kinship care for them. So another meeting with the organization working in alternative care. In Nepal, we have one loose network called Alternative Care Working Group, and this group's one of the mandate is to reintegrate the children in kinship family. So we are going to meet them during the week of kinship care campaign. And another, we will make or disseminate the video and audio PSA to raise the awareness on mass media, in radio or YouTube channel, so the people think about the kinship care. Oh, this is the kinship care system, and we have to think, we have to know about this type of kinship care. And another, at the same time, we are going to organize different activity session with the family of children to explain about the kinship care and its provision and its importance and its, legal provision in Nepal. So these are the main activity we are going to launch in our kinship care campaign. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Raju. It's great to hear about the exciting activities that you've got planned and the fact that you're going to be engaging with so many different groups of people from kind of policy level to practitioners to families as well. It's a fantastic opportunity to really raise that awareness around kinship care. And we're looking forward to the video that comes out of it. I think it sounds like a great resource that we can all benefit from. So thank you. Blessing, it'd be great to hear from you around the work that you'll be doing in Zimbabwe.
Great, thanks, Gemma. Greetings from Zimbabwe. As an organization, we believe that children have got better opportunities of development if they grow in a family setting without sibling separation, and in a familiar environment, where they can learn their culture. So we have been supporting kinship care families ever since the inception of FOST. And for us, the Kinship Care Week actually presents an opportunity to celebrate, the good work that has been done or is being done by the carers in spite of the many challenges that they face in trying to provide support and care to children in kinship care. Then we also want to take advantage of this opportunity to share our solidarity messages with the whole world. As you can see, this is something that is not just happening in Zimbabwe or in Nepal. It's happening actually across a number of countries, and we want to take advantage of that. And we also want to share the work that we have been doing as an organization ever since our inception. Share, the impact that we have been able to make so far in terms of supporting these families, and what is it that they've been able to achieve in spite of the many challenges that they face. Then it's also an opportunity for us to advocate for more support for kinship care. Can you move on to the next slide? Next slide, please. So in terms of the activities that we have planned for this week, actually we've already started implementing some of the activities, pre-activities to the week. So far, we have managed to launch the Global Kinship Care Week on our social media platforms, where we've been posting information and key messages on the promotion of kinship care. And we also managed to conduct a field visit on the 27th of September with one of the radio presenters of a national radio, where we had discussions with children. They were actually collecting recordings, and they had discussions with children and grandparents who live in kinship care arrangements, so that we can actually understand the challenges and the benefits that they are facing, within the kinship care arrangement. And the first recording was actually shared on Tuesday on radio. Then we've also had some dialogues with children in kinship care, coming from 8 schools. And at each school, we're targeting about 50 children. And basically, what we wanted to do was to explore kinship care benefits and challenges being faced by these children and their grandparents. And we also wanted to explore the emotional issues that these children are having. And we also wanted to document key messages from the beneficiaries, so that we could include them, in our kinship care week. Then from the 7th of October, we plan to have stakeholder sensitization and consultations, where we'll be sharing information on kinship care and promoting kinship care as the best model for alternative care for children in need of care, in need of parental care. Then we also want to advocate for the development of kinship care guidelines in Zimbabwe during that week, as we meet with the stakeholders. Then we're also going to be conducting about 2 or 3 more radio sessions that will be aired, so that we continue to create advocacy around kinship care. And this will be having kind of lived experiences, because they've recorded the children and the grandparents who are in kinship care, and they will be sharing actually the challenges that they have been facing, within kinship care, and what they've been able to do to support children in kinship care. Then we also want to do some awareness creation through mobile campaigns within the communities. And we are also looking at social media engagements with children and youth adolescents on our Facebook handles. Next slide, please. And then in terms of key messages, we are looking at sharing messages that include sharing with the country that kinship care is such a masterpiece, and it remains a natural occurrence, which is not subject to scrutiny by government through legislation and policy to govern its existence, in the local communities. So we are just encouraging that, the government maintains kinship care in its formal nature, but we definitely need, to support it, because it's actually a masterpiece that proved to work. Also, kinship care is a natural masterpiece which was founded on a society that was both, caring and sharing. So, children, they enjoy, the caring and the sharing that they experience, within kinship care households. Then also kinship care provides sustainable biological relationships and cultural affiliations, less placement disruptions, and caring in the long term for the children. Then also kinship carers are providing this priceless, we call it a priceless service, even, they are having challenges with inadequate support and resourcing. Then again, kinship care, next slide. Kinship care is currently being incapacitated by the economic hardships, unemployment, and drought, among other dire challenges, threatening its continued existence in Zimbabwe. Then also, kinship care has been severely affected by poverty, to an extent that it has been left frayed. Then lastly, one of our key messages is that the sustainability of kinship care hinges on the provision of resources for the well-being of the children. So these are the key messages and what we'll be doing during the week of kinship care. Thanks, Gemma.
Thanks, Blessing. And it's great to hear all of these different ways in which the voices of children and caregivers are going to be really amplified through radio programs and social media and events through schools. It's great to see. Thank you so much for sharing. So, what is kinship care and why do we need to hold a global kinship care week? One of the findings from the research and the development of the guidance was that the term kinship care itself isn't very well known or used by those providing kinship care or practitioners often working within kinship care. And it's a form of care that is often taken for granted and overlooked when it comes to support. So the UN guidelines for the alternative care of children define it as family-based care within the child's extended family or with close friends of the family, known to the child, whether formal or informal in nature. So what can this look like in practice? Kinship care, in its broad definition, can encompass many caregiver arrangements and can include care by grandparents, aunts, uncles, adult siblings, and other close relatives, or by distant relatives, care by friends of the family, who the child may know very well or sometimes may know very little. It can also have varying degrees of parental contact and engagement in the child's upbringing. It can be both an informal arrangement between family members or a more formalized arrangement involving the courts and social service workers. There are multiple forms of formal kinship care. Some of these arrangements can sit between the formal and the informal, including such things like private family arrangements, which are supported by social service workers but not formally recognized by the courts. Kinship care can be a long-term arrangement, or it can be a very short-term, flexible measure that sees children moving frequently between households. Kinship care can be used to give parents a short break or whilst a parent is temporarily unavailable due to the period in hospital or prison, and therefore preventing the long-term separation from parents and children. It can also include arrangements that are supported by the child and the carer, or in some cases, it can be enforced upon them, either through coercion or the pressure of social norms. Arrangements can also include individual children, sibling groups, or children that are related to one another in a variety of ways, such as cousins or stepsisters, siblings. There isn't currently a universal understanding of kinship care. So why support kinship care? Children prefer kinship care to other forms of alternative care. Many children in kinship care are loved and well cared for, and kinship care can offer children continuity, a sense of identity and belonging, and an important social network. Kinship care is often more stable than other forms of alternative care, and kinship care tends to lead to better outcomes for children than other forms of care. Kinship care can allow siblings to stay together and is something that is highly valued by children themselves. So what does kinship care look like in Zimbabwe and Nepal? Are there any official definitions, and what are the different forms that it can take? And how do the support needs vary in these two contexts? Blessing, can we come to you first to hear about Zimbabwe? Blessing, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Thanks, Gemma. So, yeah, in Zimbabwe, I think it's almost similar to maybe other countries, but basically from what we have in Zimbabwe, taking kinship care is basically taking care of children, of relatives and friends whose biological parents are unable to live with these children or look after them for, a number of reasons. It could be because of death, or maybe the children, they want to access maybe a better school, so they end up taking care of those children. And you'd realize that from the current findings that we have from the scoping study that we've had in Zimbabwe on kinship care, it also revealed that kinship care entails, integrating children into the family system of the carer and taking care of their various needs so that you would enable them to grow and develop in a normal family environment. And one good thing is that kinship care is actually rooted in the traditional and cultural values that we have in Zimbabwe. in where basically we say a child belongs to the community, and therefore it is the duty of the community to look after a child when biological parents, for one or any other reasons, are unable to provide, that care. And also, traditionally, kinship care was the responsibility of immediate family members or extended family members. But you'd realize that with the current urbanization, which has resulted in the dislocation of the nuclear family, kinship care is extended to neighbors and even friends of parents of children being looked after. So you'd realize that even neighbors or friends can actually provide kinship care. Yeah. And then in terms of next slide, in terms of the forms that it takes in Zimbabwe, you'd realize that we have both formal and informal kinship care, although you'd realize that the greater percentage of the children in kinship care is it remains largely informal. Then next slide, in terms of the support needs, you'd realize that the support needs, they actually differ because kinship care, I think you have highlighted earlier on, is sophisticated. And usually when we are doing our social work with families that are in kinship care, we cannot take the one-size-fits-all approach to social work because their needs actually differs. And sometimes you find it's because it can be because of the providers of kinship care, they differ. We have grandparents, both from the maternal and paternal, who are providers of kinship care. We have aunties, we have uncles, cousins, and sisters-in-law. And these people, they face so much different challenges. So you'd realize that the kind of support that they would need, it actually differs. And from the results of the scoping study that we did in Zimbabwe, it actually indicated that the grandparents are the most common kinship carers in Zimbabwe. And in the case of orphaned children, the immediate surviving family of the parents usually provides kinship care to these children. But just the fact that the greater number of children in kinship care are being looked after by grandparents, that also presents, a bigger challenge in terms of the support that is needed by these children that are being taken care of by the grandparents. Yeah. Thank you, Gemma.
Thanks, Blessing. Can we move forward on the slides, please? Thank you. Great. Thanks, Blessing, and great to hear where those similarities and differences are in the different contexts. Raju, it'd be great to hear in terms of the experiences of kinship care in Nepal and how that's looking. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Gemma. And my internet is fluctuating. Sorry for this. So in Nepal, kinship care system, this is, traditional practice. It's a long rooted
We can't hear him. We can't hear him. Maybe
Raju
shutting off. Yeah.
Yeah, Raju just seems to be having some technical difficulties. Let me just help him reconnect. Raju, are you able to hear us or switch to a different modem? Okay. Bear with us a second whilst we help him to reconnect. Whilst we're waiting for Raju to reconnect and share with us on the Nepal context, we could maybe jump to some of the questions that have been coming in the Q&A. So I know there was a question earlier around the kind of differences between alternative care and kinship care. Blessing, do you think you'd like to come back to that?
Sorry, Gemma, can you come again with the question?
Yeah, I'm just finding it now. But there was a question around what are some of the differences between alternative care and kinship care?
All right. For us, probably from experience in Zimbabwe, because recently our government is actually approved an alternative care policy, that looks at, how children in need of alternative care can be supported. So when we talk about alternative care, we are looking at all other models that also include kinship care. So we do have institutionalization, we do have adoption, we do have foster care, and kinship care is part of alternative care.
What I would just add to that is some of the findings that we came across in the development of the guidance and the research was that children themselves who are in kinship care quite often don't consider themselves to be in alternative care and instead just consider themselves to still be within the family. So it can also be seen as a form of prevention of family breakdown. So kinship care is quite unique compared to other forms of alternative care in the sense that it can fit into both the alternative care bracket, but also into a key mechanism for family strengthening and prevention of family breakdown. Thanks, Blessing. Raju, you're back, so that's great. Please,
Yeah, I am back.
tell us
Sorry.
about Nepal.
Yeah, sorry for this.
No problem, Raju. These things happen. So thank you. Please carry on.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, in Nepal, there is, legally defined about the kinship care, and we have Children Act 2017. It means 2018 in English date. Uh, our Children Act, Article 49, there is provision of, definition of the kinship care. The kinship family is the relatives of mother and father. So legally, the kinship care is also introduced in the act. So now the government also taking some step to make a legal system for the kinship care in Nepal. Next slide, please. And Nepal government has taking a step through the Children Act, and there is another uh, children's regulation in Nepal. The regulation prioritize that if the children do not have biological family, they should be placed in kinship care by a child welfare officer. This means a child welfare officer, this is government position. She or he has to identify the kinship family with the support of the local social worker and psychologist, and she or he is the authorized person from the government who uh, plays or who can take decision for the kinship care system. So there is need to, there is a provision of the best interest determination of children before placing the children in kinship care system. But in Nepal, this system is not in place. Just in, provision is in act, in regulation. So, we have to advocate for this. And next slide, please. In Nepal, kinship care system is still informal. It is driven by the strong sense of, families, obligation or cultural value as well as the collective responsibility. For example, if there is a child who lost his parents, and the kinship family, they have to take care of the children to show the other community member also, I am the close relative of that child, and I have to take care. But there is not any monitoring of the safeguarding or protection measure. So just I mean based on the provision in Children Act and Regulation Voice of Children, we have practiced kinship care setting and advocating for the guideline of all kinship care. Yeah, since I mean 25 year we are working in our experience, 8% children are reintegrated in kinship care setting among the total reintegration of children, I mean with whom we are working. So this is informal, but we are I mean connecting or informing through the letter, through the MOU with the local government to take care or to ensure the protection and safeguarding of the children who are living in the kinship care setting. So next slide, please. And I mean, in kinship care setting, the kinship family, they need different type of support, but there is not any, I mean, bulk of support. That should be the individual assessment, and I mean, we have to provide support to the kinship family. Somehow the socio-economic condition of the kinship family also not very good in our experience, so we are supporting to the kinship family for their children's education or parenting education or other income generation support to the family. So we have, I mean, up to now we have very good cooperation, and the kinship family are more, I mean, more better to our experience working with the kinship family. So next slide. Okay, I think I finished. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Raju. And thank you again to both of you for highlighting some of those similarities and differences in terms of your each of your individual contexts and the way that kinship care is being used and being supported in each of those contexts as well. So how can you support us in supporting kinship care families? The Global Kinship Care Week will be launched next week. It would be great if you can join our social media campaign, share some of the messages with your networks, and help us to raise awareness on what kinship care is and why it needs more support. You can join the kinship care community on Changemakers for Children platform, and we'll also be sharing a participation pack for those organisations who want to support the campaign in their own context with key tools and resources that can be shared and used during the week. I think we'll be sharing a link to the Changemakers platform in the chat. And now we've got 10 minutes to answer some of the questions that have been coming through. And if there's any more, then please, this is your time to put the questions in either the Q&A box or the chat message. So in terms of some of the questions that have come through, I know there was a question here from Chrissy Gale around the suggestion that children would be encouraged into kinship care for better access to education. So I think that's a point of clarification. We wouldn't be encouraging children out of parental care into kinship care for better access to education. It's more an acknowledgement that that is often one of the reasons that families choose to move their children into kinship care settings. But Blessing, maybe do you want to respond to that one?
Yeah, you just said it correctly, Gemma. I think it's one of the reasons why I think even from our study that we conducted in Zimbabwe, we realized that some of the children, they actually move into kinship care because they want to access, it could be better education, or maybe where they are located, they are staying very far away from the schools, and the children probably they have to walk 10 kilometers or so that they can access education. So if they have a relative who stays closer to that school, they would then even prefer to let the child stay with the relative so that they can access, education. Yeah. But this will be just temporary.
Thanks, Blessing. There was another question around access to examples on promising practice around kinship care. So are there any best practices or remarkable interventions on kinship care? And the answer is yes, there's lots of fantastic examples from around the world. I think we're going to try and share a link to the global guidance that was developed earlier this year, which includes 44 examples of promising practice from around the world. Um, and also helps to kind of, depending on the types of context that you're encountering and the issues that you're encountering, the guidance is a really good way of navigating that to find examples of practice that are really relevant to your own context. So we'll share a link to that in the chat. And I'd also recommend joining the Kinship Care community on Changemakers, because that's a platform for practitioners working on kinship care to connect, share resources, share learning, and share different experiences as well. Another question here was, what's the role governments can play in promoting kinship care where it is difficult to implement at ground level due to the reasons like cultural practices or extreme poverty? Raju or Blessing, would either of you like to take this question?
So
Yeah.
So I can share. So I mean, obviously the role of the government should be, I mean, to ensure the protection of children in kinship care setting. But I mean, most of the country, especially the developing country, the government is not being proactive due to the, I mean, less resources or human resource, or I mean, not willing to promote such type of setting. Those are, I mean, from the traditional practice in our community and everywhere in the old and in every village. I think there is the system of the kinship care that is, somehow the people or family are keeping the children from the perspective of humanitarian and familial responsibility. So, I mean, we have to advocate to make accountable to the government for kinship care setting is, the children are living in biological family. That is also same in the kinship setting. There should be the, ensure the protection or safeguard of the children. Yeah, this is my opinion. Thank you very much. I hope I would address.
Yeah, maybe for us, from our experience in Zimbabwe, we realize that the majority of children, over 90% of orphaned and vulnerable children in need of alternative care or parental care, they are staying in kinship care. And of that 94%, more than 60% are being taken care of by grandmother. So you can see the magnitude of the problem, when you talk about, families or children that are in kinship care. So one thing that we realized was that we needed to have some form of commitment from the government. And normally, if you don't have a practice identifying with a certain piece of policy, sometimes it's difficult, for that practice to get, support from the government. And here we're talking about issues to do with sustainability, in support. So what we had a lot of advocacy with our government, and they had to review one of the policies that speaks to issues around alternative care. And they finally agreed to include, kinship care into the reviewed policy. So we now have kinship care in one of the policies that was actually signed off by approved by the government a month or so ago. So it's now easy for us to have things like even guidelines that speak to how, kinship care can be supported. And also, I think implementation of programs such as harmonized cash transfers, among other forms of financial assistance to the caregivers, can also assist. And also, because kinship care also face challenges economically, it's important, having programs such as economic strengthening activities so that we're able to build their resilience against poverty. Yeah. Because poverty has been one of the challenges that these households have been facing.
Thanks both. There's another question here around what kind of tools and assessments do you implement to safeguard or prevent SGBV against children in kinship care? Do you have any examples of this?
Yeah, maybe.
Yes. Okay, please, Blessing.
Thanks. I think here in Zimbabwe, I think one of the major challenges that we've had is that kinship care is largely informal. So sometimes when it comes to monitoring these children that are within kinship care, it has been I think one of the challenges where we've had reports of children, being abused. But one good thing that is there in the communities that we are supporting, we've got volunteers. Each of the communities that we support, we have volunteers that are there that work on the ground, monitoring these households. In spite of the challenge that we have with our service workforce, which is actually limited. I remember in yesterday's one of the webinars, I was sharing the ratio that we have, the social worker ratio against, the children. Currently in Zimbabwe, I
I'm
think.
sorry, the voice is not clear. The voice is breaking up a little bit.
I think,
Oh,
Raju, if you can put yourself on mute, that might help.
can you hear me now?
Thanks, Raju. I think that's clear. Is that clearer?
Yes, thank you. Continue, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Blessing.
So
Carry
the,
on.
the social worker child ratio, I think it should be now above a district level. It should be one social worker against over 4,000 children. And here we are talking about children that are in foster care, children that were in institutions. We are not even talking about children that are in kinship care, which is informal. So you can see the challenge that we have in terms of our service workforce. So what we have been doing is taking advantage of the para professionals, the volunteers that are within the communities, so that they help, with the monitoring of these children within these households, and they work together with our social workers. They report to our social workers, or they can also report to the government social workers when there is a case of abuse within the communities. Yeah.
Thanks, Blessing. I can see Reggie's put an answer in the chat, so I'll make sure that goes to everybody. And unfortunately, we've run out of time. So thank you so much, and apologies for the questions that we haven't had a chance to get to. Thank you to our panelists for joining today and sharing, and thank you to everyone who's joined us. And please do support the Kinship Care Week next week. Later today, we'll be sharing the participation pack that people can be using and some of the different tools and resources within that. And a recording for this webinar will also be shared later this week. So thank you again. Thank you to the panelists. And thank you to all of those that joined us today.
Thank you.
And we look forward to raising more awareness on kinship care all together next week. Thank you.